What is going on, everybody? So, welcome back to another post game reaction tonight. Obviously the title, let me make sure don't know, but yeah, the Eagles take care of business against the Miami Dolphins, 31-17 in that fashion. Especially in the debut of the Kelly Greens. But before we get into it and all that, if you guys new, make sure to hit that like button, also hit that subscribe button, make sure to ring that notification bell, so you guys will not miss any of the new content coming to the channel. But that being said, yeah, as the title states, Eagles kind of pretty much dominate the Dolphins 31-17. Yeah, there's a lot of things well, that just really didn't really look right. And obviously Jalen Hurts really looked very shaky for majority of this game. But what's going on, RC? But to be fair, I mean, look, it was not one of the best. I mean, it was a somewhat okay game, but also it was a great, statement when obviously coming off let's bro, that most disgusting loss within the Jets. But Hurts looked very shaky at times. Um, and at times when one can make the argument think with Tua as well. Obviously, once the pressure started, Eagles getting to him. Obviously with Decide bringing some blitz packages, coming in. But I will say, before we go any to the numbers breakdown of some things, is the fact that I'm going to give a lot of credit, a lot of respect to the Miami Dolphins. Now the fact they're not a I guess you could say they're not fully 100%. And you're probably wondering, probably think to yourself, how are they not 100%? Obviously, you still don't have you don't have Ramsey, obviously coming off a meniscus injury. They don't have some of their backup pieces, whatnot, on the offensive line. Yeah, so they were missing some spots, I guess you can say, on this roster. Uh, but I will say, the Dolphins, I think they're legit. And because honestly, I will say, um, oh yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that. But we're not going to talk about the 49ers. Obviously, they will play this Monday night, and obviously, I'm not going to be surprised if it's an ass whooping by the Niners. Irrelevant thing, but I will say, with the Dolphins, I do think they're going to be one of the teams that I do think are going to be a thorn in the side for a lot of teams in the AFC. Because for me, I still think they're a team that can really take that division away from Buffalo. Um, it depends, and like I said, and the one thing is for me before going into this game, not just this game, but also before the season started, was the health of Tua. Can he really stay healthy and show he's was worth that early first round pick that the Dolphins, I think, went fifth overall. But he's really showed, and this year has showed it. I've liked what the offensive line has shown, and yeah, I mean, I like the packages, and there's a lot of things that I've really liked so far. I mean, yes, I know Miami in this game kind of shot themselves in the foot, I would say. Yeah, I do think the Dolphins are a playoff team, and if you don't think if you're going to be one of those delusional NFL fans, don't think they're going to be a playoff team. And yes, I know this is not one of the better or one of the worst losses I've seen the Dolphins take, but I still think they're a team that's going to be a threat in the AFC East, because I don't have no faith. I don't have the faith in the Jets. Let's put the Patriots. We don't know where they stand because they stink. The Bills, it's hard to buy into them each and every year because they're always things like, oh, they always put a Super Bowl roster together, and either somebody's having a season injury on the defense, or Josh Allen's being reckless. There was a lot of problems with the Bills, but I do think this is the Dolphins division to lose. But I do think they're going to be a playoff team, that's for sure. I think they're going to be a division winner. I that's the way I look at it. But besides that, like I said, Hurts, not one of the better games I've seen him. I mean, look, the best game he's played so far was, I think, against the Vikings. I mean, and also too with Tampa Bay as well. But right now, really look at this team, and I gotta give a lot of credit to Sean Desai, who I think some people had a lot of skepticisms going into this year with him being the new defensive coordinator and what he was going to bring. Now, granted, there are times where some of his packages don't really work, and yeah, you really can't believe the side of what he's been given, especially with guys like, well, let's roll Terrell Edmonds is completely trash. I think try to move on, find his replacement. I thought Sidney Brown played okay. Um, and perfect point, case in point, they are. The Dolphins are a young, improving team, but I still think they're going to make some noise in the AFC because the Chiefs, look, they may be 6-1, but I would say kind of the same boat as not a strong 6-1. But that's besides the point. But really looking at how the Dolphins played, I mean, look, Tyreek Hill, even if he does retire, I still think he's going to be an NFL Hall of Famer as all said and done. And I do think he's going to get a 2,000-yard season when it's all said and probably more than 2,000 yards. Um, and yeah, and there were some things that really concerned, not from the Eagles side of things, but also with Miami. But yeah, like I said, in terms of Miami shooting themselves in the foot, yeah, they got shot themselves in the foot with 10 penalties. It's some of them. And yes, and I've seen a lot of delusional Dolphins fans say, "Oh, it's us against them against the rest." I'm not going to really, and quite honestly, that's a stupid ass excuse. Now, yes, there were some calls that were missed. Sure, yeah, the refereeing the last couple of years in the NFL had been awful. That's well documented, but the league's not going to do nothing about that. But the thing was with the Dolphins kind of, and at times the Eagles have taken it and capitalized on a little bit to an extent, but not to the, well, I mean, look, we put up 31. But I really do think the Dolphins, I think they're too much of a good team not to play the way that they were playing. If I'm going to be completely honest. But at the end of the day, no, it's a win for the Eagles. Not right now, one of our best statement wins that we've have. Look, going into this game, I actually surprised on this. I actually had us lose it, and I even said it on record too. I think countless times, even on social media. And I talked to some friends of mine that going into this game, I think this was our first loss going. I would say this was the first loss I actually had circled on the schedule. I think it was the Dolphins. I think the Bills is another one. I think we could probably lose to, but I still think. But then again, the way how the Bills have played has not been that impressive. But I do think we're split with Dallas. That's kind of given. It's like that each and every year. Yes, I know next week we got the Commanders, who, well, let's be real, have not really been that impressive. Which We'll talk more on a separate episode of the All Star Sports Show. But I mean, at the same time, though, it really is, and yeah, and I even said this too, and before we go into like the stats breakdown, but there's a couple things I have to get off my chest. Um, Number one, I kind of put most of these Eagles fans on blast. Like I said, I don't really name names. I'm not the kind of person that does that. But the fact of the matter is the fact that some of these Eagles fans, and obviously we have seen, and shout out to some Arizona fans I'm good friends with, and they actually brought up a good point. When you really look at it, this fan base as a whole, like we got like more douchebags than we do realistic fans. And look, yeah, and I mean at times I can act like an idiot, sure, and yeah, and I can be very pessimistic. It's kind of part of the DNA at times. But really looking at how this, and look, yes, the Dolphins. Yeah, but before we go into the Dolphins, because I actually liked what I saw. Well, and let's be real, what I beside, not taking away from Cheetah, it's and Jalen Waddle, and at times the thing with the Dolphins, and like I said, it's always the injury bug for some reason. Whether it's and yet, Waddle, obviously kind of hurt his back a little bit, but I think that's more. I'm not really going to make excuses for that for him, but I do think him hurting his back a little bit kind of really put a damper on things, I guess you could say. Cheetah still did his thing. I'm not really surprised about that. But what's going on, Almighty? But really looking at how the Dolphins operate, and like I said, I got to give a lot of credit to Mike McDaniels. in its own right for a guy that, had his problems early on, but he's really changed on what Miami can do. And yes, and that's no disrespect to Brian Flores, but a defensive minded head coach, especially with how talented this Miami team can be, it's not really going to really mean much. But I really do think having someone like Mike McDaniels from learning what he learned in San Francisco, and exactly like I said, that's the one thing. Look, there were some calls that were missed. Like I said, I'm not like I said, I'm not going to really sugarcoat it. Look, we got a face mask that was called, and there was some calls were missed. Sure, and let's be real. We all know that the ref situation the last couple of years have not been the greatest. I mean, boy, if you're been watching the game long enough, you could tell some instances where calls should have been blown or should have been called. Um, like in case in particular, um, before we move on, but like I said, two instances I can remember were in the postseason. You had the Minneapolis Miracle, which let's be real, Adam Thielen did push off, which should have been an offensive PI. That should have been called. And also I think it was the Saints and the Rams, if I'm not mistaken, but somebody let me know. I can't think of it. But yeah, PI sometimes it does get called, but there was some. What's funny about the pass interference call at times, it's very 50-50 depending on who you're asking. Because we've seen at times where the PI doesn't get called, sometimes it does, or just there's no in between. But I will say, but then, yeah, there were some penalties, and yes, the false starts. Well, that's going to really happen at times. Which you really can't blame the Dolphins, but that's kind of the one penalty that's been kind of shoot themselves in the foot most of the time was the false starts. Now, yes, we had both us and Miami did get penalized for both defensive and offensive. Should have been more defensive when you looked at the hand placement on the neutral zone. But like I said, I'm not really going to make no fuss about that. But really looking at this, how this game was played, yeah, there was calls missed. There was just a lot of things didn't really go well for the Miami Dolphins. And same with the Eagles too. No, I'm not going to really be one-sided. There's a lot of things, now the Dolphins, I don't really think that's going to really 1-2 losses isn't really going to mean much. But I do believe they're still going to have a good good season. Don't get me wrong. But there's things that they have to keep some of these guys healthy. Tua in particular, like I said, I hate talking about Tua. Like I said, I'm not a huge hater on Tua. It's just for me, it's just like the one thing I always criticized with the Dolphins was their protection or their lack of protection, I would say, the last couple of years with Tua, obviously with the concussion issues. We all know how that really turned out last year, and how a lot of people were talking about it, and rightfully so, for the mismanagement of Tua's concussions. But Tua, you're probably going to ask me, like, who's going to be the league MVP? I wanted to probably say it's more learned towards Tua. You can make it argument for Cheetah, for Tyreek Hill. Even though it's kind of hard nowadays for a non-quarterback. And that's true. But I think they got Dallas coming up next on their schedule. Someone let me know. But really looking at, and yeah, look, we're 6-1. And like I said, going to this one, I was defensively, I actually had confidence in the defense, but offensively, I was kind of 50-50. But what's going on, Jerry? But yeah, 31-17, obviously, to quite honest, before I talked to my buddy Tyre about this, was the fact that I thought this game was going to be a lot closer than what it should have been, or what the score says, quite honestly. But, obviously, with the mistakes that Miami's made, we capitalized. We made some mistakes. They capitalized. But kind of just trading shots back and forth a lot of times. And, yeah, there's some blame to go around. Obviously, the play calling has not really been the best. And I even said on my and yeah, look, and that's, yeah, I mean, good point pointed that the Dolphins got filleted. But at the same time, you really can't. And look, yeah, they were dealing with some key injuries, and they still played a decent football game. not having Jalen Ramsey. I like not Jaden Phillips. Jalen Phillips. So, whatever. Um, Bradley Chubb. As much as he was a pain in the ass, was really not that much of a factor. So most of the time, now yes, the run game was kind of stagnant, and yes, I mean the Miami defense has a nice solid run defense. I'm gonna give that respect to where it's due. Um, I do like Xavier Howard, but it also depends too. At times we've seen where, and yeah, and at times when we need Goddard to get involved, which is great now to see him get involved the last couple of games, um, which really does help open up the playbook a little bit. But at some point going forward, the QB draws have to be limited. Depending on the situation, we really need a QB draw. Um, and especially that last play, I think in the third or like mid fourth, where he had Hurts, despite taking the hit, drops in the breadbasket of AJ Brown in between two defenders. I think it was, yeah, it really is. I mean, Swift, and look, I know Swift. I think he's what? So we see how his game played today. He's getting close to in the top four. I mean, look, I think he's still in top five in rushing, but right now I think everything goes the way how it's going for a lot of teams. I think CMC is definitely going to take the running back, right, leading that court. Yeah, and at times we have, like I said, there's a time and place for the QB draw. Like in particular, the way I look at it is, if you want to draw up a QB draw, if you have like a total man coverage, say on Smitty, Smith, or actually AJ Brown, that for that matter, and Dallas Goedert, and sometimes an occasional Julio Jones when you really need it from the slant side. And yeah, in the red zone, boy, I know that's kind of like beating a dead horse the last 7 weeks. That's always been the bugaboo with this roster, or especially from the Eagle side of things. And that's the thing too, and not just from the Eagles, but even the Dolphins. Minus that, if you took away that pick, this score could have got a lot ugly for the Dolphins. Yeah, I mean, look, one bad throw from Hurts, and which is kind of funny that I've seen a lot of people want to call for his head or bench him. In reality, when you look at his backup, who's not that much, and let's put Mariota is not that much better and I know preseason really doesn't really say much, but when you really look at how Mariota was at preseason, does inspire a lot of confidence. And yeah, and that's one thing that's been, it is what it is. Look, a win's a win. But I think Deshaun Desai, I think he done a very good job calling the defensive side. Now, yes, I think how he has to find replacements for guys like Terrell Edmonds. I do think, and yeah, and Desai has shown to be, and at times when he really, and depending on the situation, if you need to bring the blitz, which Desai has done more than a couple times here tonight for the Eagles. And you saw it, with the way I think it was like with the rush, I think rush 4. And you've seen Tua kind of just, and at times, and Miami center had a hard time, getting the right snap to Tua. And well, we've seen a couple low snaps, and really just hasn't really done much. And look, we held him to under 20 points, which that's not really, and that's an improvement, because I mean, if you look at the remaining of the schedule, we're giving up 20, at least between 20 to 25 points a game. But outside of Tampa Bay, was the only other team that we held under 15, under 15. So we played 2 games out of so far as a 6-1 team held our opposition, which is, look, the Bucks. Well, that's the Bucks. That's not really saying much with Baker Mayfield that defense is no guard to be 60, but that's besides the point. Yeah, the third and long, there's that the blitz should have been called, but not it. At times hasn't really cost us any scores. Not exactly, but it is a bit frustrating at times to see where, like a 3rd and 18 or 3rd and 17, where we could have blitzed right there, brought the entire house in, but obviously kept the safeties and the linebacker, or at least keep 1 or 2 safeties there in case you have to go over the middle. But at the end of the day, after the end of this game, you saw where, and people are say, exactly, the Dolphins are the number 1 scoring offense in this league. And at times, there's arguments to be made. They play some crappy competition, sure, but at the same time, they show what they can do with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, hell, even Cedric Wilson Jr., who's been as a solid number 3. A good running game with Raheem Mostert. Obviously didn't have the rookie Devin Chain, obviously on the IR for the next 3 weeks, give or take. And I don't think they had Jeff Wilson was not really much used. And what's kind of crazy too, the Miami's running game has not really been that. We actually kind of just really not really did. We kind of just really just kind of locked down the run game. Now, yes, there's some of the outside runs. We got to figure out a way to plug that. Exactly. I can't disagree with that there, Jerry. But moving forward, look, Tua 23 for 32, 216 with the touchdown and a pick. Obviously, that pick coming off a big play of Darius Slay, who, well, obviously at times has been non-existent. But that was a huge kind of interception to really kind of stop the momentum that Miami was having. Could have been 2, but just Bradbury was just a tad late. But had a good read on it. Just got somehow Tua put it right between his hands and right into the hands of Tyreek Hill. Where you can't really do much on that. I mean, in terms of running, Tyreek Hill 11, or say receiving. Pretty much that was, obviously Tyreek Hill, no surprise, 11 catches for 88 yards. Jalen Waddle had 6 for 63 yards. Cedric Wilson 248. Braxton Berrios 1 for 7, and not really much going on there. When turn, but I will say, and yeah, I've seen people a lot of blame Lane Johnson at times. For allowing allowing the sack, and at the same time, you got to look at the streak that he's had. Look, he's been long enough to know, not let it get any defenders by him. And yeah, it really did. Yeah, exactly, Jerry. And that's the thing too. We just, and the way how Sean Desai's philosophy has been so far through right now 7 weeks. Yes, it's still the bend don't break type of defense, but we don't. And at times he's got to learn how to stop playing our corners about 5 yards up. But at times, I know that really aggravates a lot of people. But at some times, we've seen it at sometimes just, and yeah, that's it. Yeah, and look, Lane's just kind of one of those kind of tackles where he goes on this one of these streaks where he's not going to let up a sack, say, in a couple of years. Look, sacks are going to happen. It is what it is, the way you look at it. But in terms of, look, Hurts, I know he looked a little shaky, went 23 for 31, 270 with 279 yards, 2 touches and a pick. And trust me, I've seen a lot of Cowboys, that's a whole besides the point. But Hurts, I thought he actually had a okay game for what yeah, and yeah, Lane was dealing with a bum ankle, and like I got it, and knowing that, yes, and we got Washington next week. I think a little cortisone or the I think it's a Tortorol. I think it's whatever it is. I do think after tonight, they're gonna. I do think when they get into next week, I think they're gonna. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of things that really shown to really, no matter what injury that some of these guys. Look at Johnson last year, torn with the torn abductor muscle, which is in your stomach area. And yeah, had to take some cortisol and obviously with high adrenaline at the same time. But and yeah, and the red zone has to get better, which at some point it's the only biggest bug. That's the only thing that's a bugaboo with this roster. Everything else is pretty much fine when you really look at it of how this team plays. It's just one thing in the red zone, they just seems to, I don't know. It's what's the word I'm looking for? You kind of just shut it all down, I guess you could say. AJ Brown, not having another solid game from him. Yeah, exactly what I'm saying. What I said, Jerry. Yeah, and still played pretty solidly, and actually beat a guy like Nick Bosa, who he's no in terms of the defensive ends, no slouch whatsoever. But moving on. But in terms with AJ Brown, 10 catches for 130, a buck 37 with a touchdown on 15 targets. That's no surprise because AJ Brown's number one. Yeah, and Smitty was hurt too, but was okay. Exactly. The catch, the catch and the fact that when also Hurts took a bit of a hit at the same time, dropping in the breadbasket. I know Julio Jones is the kind of guy. Yeah, I mean, he had one catch for 3 yards. Not the kind of guy he's the kind of guy that will take some of the attention. And obviously, right now your 3 webs as it stands is Smitty, Brown, and Goddard. I like what I've seen, and yes, I know 3 yards may not mean much for a guy like Julio Brown or Julio Jones, but still, nonetheless, to really at least get something for him. Smitty, 4 catches for 49 yards on 5 targets. Same with Goddard, I would say, with 5 catches for 77 yards at the touchdown. Kenny Gainwell, I want to see him, not seeing more uses from him, but I would say limit his touches, not to the point where he will not use them, but which is impressive. And look, I will say, and say, that's the one thing that's been impressive, and Cheetah's not and that's the thing too. Cheetah kind of like Tyreek Hill's one of those kind of guys, like no matter what kind of defense you put on him, he's still gonna beat you. Like that's how crazy, how good, or how stupidly good Tyreek Hill really truly is. He's just one of those kind of talents that no matter what defense you put on, whether it's double coverage, triple coverage, whatever that case may be, and he will still find a way to beat you. And I will always respect Tyreek Hill for that. I still think he's a phenomenal wide receiver in this league. Quite honestly, I think, well, I'm not really going to put out a hot take, but relevant hot take, I do think he's as much, well, then again, he's been in the league longer than Justin Jefferson. But I do think Jettis is second, I would say is second best to Tyreek Hill. Now, the one thing is too, and yes, I mean, I think and also throughout this entire game, the Eagles did catch a break off that incomplete catch from Tyreek Hill that went off his knee, and they were fighting for that, which was not say it was a fumble, but kind of fighting for the ball in the end zone. But the Eagles caught a break there. But I think the defense played pretty solidly, and I mean the defense it's like there's no problems, but some of these guys have to stay healthy. Guys like I'm not really say Blankenship, but I think Blankenship does need to stay healthy for a little bit. But once we get him back, same with Bradley Roby, who has actually been, quite honestly, now I always say you ain't wrong there, Jerry. But Blankenship, I think he should be coming back soon. And same with Bradley Roby. And I gotta say, Bradley Roby, yes, I know he's on the older side of things, but has actually played some pretty solid defense since he's come here. I've really liked about Bradley Roby. And I mean, I think this defense can have a lot. The score can have a lot. Yeah, that's true. And that's the one thing that's I think Statlin's definitely going to work with these guys. That's for sure. The offensive line. I'm not really worried about it. But I will say, you got to protect Hurts at all costs, because we saw it last year where you definitely could see the bit dip and down play when Hurts was hurt after that Chicago game last year because of the shoulder injury. I mean, look, I know injuries are bound to happen in the NFL. I mean, and like I said, Jones got 3 yards, but you got to think of this too. Like he's still are going to still get used to the system that the Eagles are putting together on the offensive side of the football. And you can't blame Jones for that. Yes, I know he was a non-factor, granted, but at the same time, I know he didn't really play much. And at the same time, like it's like going back to what I said earlier, not even 5 seconds ago. Obviously, this is the first time he's actually been healthy. He's still, you got to think too, he's also getting accustomed to being a new team, which we have seen at times where sometimes it works. And you can see there's a little bit rust with him. But I do think he's going to be somewhat of an impact player, especially in terms of the receiving core. With Now, I said with Smitty and Brown, obviously your number 1 and 2, and obviously having Goddard your third target, and if you're gonna have guys like those drawing that much attention, and you exactly that's what I'm saying. Like, there's you really like I said, don't you really can't blame the dude. I mean, he just you know was taking time. I think either recuperating or just working out. Yeah, so give him some time. And I do think he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be this. Look, granted, yes, he's a shell of what he once was, but I do think he's still going to make an impact regardless of where he's at in his career. Um, but yeah, absolutely, I do agree, Jerry. Like, shout out to everyone that's been in the chat though. But Swift, still doing his thing. And yeah, I mean, 15, and obviously you like to see it 15 carries for 62 yards, 4.13 yards per carry. And, Hurts, kind of limit, like I said, limit the runs a little bit because some of these, yeah, Slay with probably was obviously the game winning pick. Now I know, I know that looking at the scoreboard, I don't think it was really going to mean much if he did score. But that pick was kind of really crucial to really seal the deal. With our matchup with Miami, which is crazy because I know I'm going back to what I said earlier. This is one of the games that I actually circled as a loss. With when the schedule came up, because if Miami were at their full strength, I think we definitely would have lost this game for sure. Probably a close one. But I do think. Look, I don't think Miami's going to be a slouch at all. And yes, knowing the AFC, and look, Kansas City, I think they're still a little bit. I think not going to say they're weak, but I think they're starting to heat up at the right time. I don't think. Well, let me take a look at seeing where Miami's at in terms of going to next week, because I know we do have Washington next week. I think it's in Landover, not Washington, which that's beside the point. But I've really liked what I've seen from both Philly, not just from my Eagles, but also from Miami. And to my, I appreciate that, Jerry. But besides that, like I said, I'm probably going to spend another, say, 20, 25 minutes for give or take. But if you guys have any questions, that kind of thing, like I said, I'm open up to a Q&A section and stuff like that. But yeah, so really looking at it, like I said, to Miami, I like what I see from Miami. Now, yes, they're the kind of team that, yeah, they're averaging over 30 points a game. Granted, and that's kind of what they run. That's kind of the offense they have. But yes, I know this is probably the one, or let's say, what was their first loss? Probably not the lowest loss or the biggest loss I've seen Miami take. But really looking at going in a week, and yeah, it's been, like I said, I like what I've seen from Miami. Like I said, I'm not going to discredit Miami. I think they're a good team. But the one thing I will say, I know a lot of realistic Dolphins fans want to see is, like, can you really beat a good team? And yeah, I mean, yes, you're shorthanded in some spots, but you really have shown to. And yes, early on, granted, you did show what you guys are capable of. And yeah, we did early to really kick things off. Yeah, well, should have put up 7, but just had to sell it for 3. Same with Miami. And we all know where it was going to be that type of game, more on the defensive end. I think a little bit towards, I think, after going out to halftime, where we started seeing some of the offense kind of explode. In terms of scoring, get the yardage, quarterbacks doing their thing. Right now, I mean, when I looked at the rest of the numbers from Tua, I think it's probably like the lowest. No, actually, probably one of like the second or third lowest that he's put up. But at the same time, yeah, you're in the O line. Let's. I don't think they don't have a terrible O line, but their O line isn't that strong. When you really have guys, and especially if you're having Deshaun Desai kind of sometimes bring the house on you. And at the same time, it's and same thing can be said with the and yes, the Eagles have a better offensive line, one of the top O lines in football, but I think Miami's going to get up there as well. I do believe so. But I'm not excited. Like I said, good win. I think it's a good statement win off a bounce back win off a, well, it's probably the most ugliest of losses we've seen in the last couple of years from the Philadelphia Eagles over the New York Jets. Even though we still own them, we're 12-1 against the Jets. Shit happens. We pretty much took that loss and move on, going into week 8. Play some solid football and that kind of stuff. But all that being said, though, like I said, I don't have much to add on there. But shout out to everyone that's been in the chat. If you guys are new, make sure you hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one.